let's look at it like this, my main man. There are certain athletes or there are certain people where at the end of a competition they go, I did what I could, but I ain't got no more. And
Yeah.
they respect an opponent, not that someone is superior, but they brought the best out of them.
Warning: Damian Andrews' growing revenue and profit, if implemented, will put more money in your pocket. Please use with caution.
Welcome to Damian Andrews' Growing Revenue and Profit with international speaker and revenue and growth specialist, Damian Andrews. This is your source for practical, usable, and simple action steps that you can do every day to put more money in your pocket. And now, the host of Damian Andrews' Growing Revenue and Profit, Damian Andrews.
And the crowd cheers wildly to the trumpeting sounds of elephants sliding through the eyes of needles. This is Damian Andrews' Growing Revenue and Profit, the program that deals with all things that put more cash in your pocket. This is the show that handles your revenue riddles, profit puzzles, operational oddities, and culture conundrums. I am the one, the only Damian Andrews, and on today's show is the amazing and wonderful Richard Blank. Now, Richard has expertise in conflict management strategy, phonetic microexpression reading, which for verbal tell signs, and the famous buffer boomerang technique. And Richard is the Chief Executive Officer of Costa Rica's call center, a division of Cheyenne consultants in Costa Rica. Now, Richard has shared his knowledge and trained over 10,000 bilingual telemarketers. Plus, he has the largest collection of restored American pinball machines and antique Rockola jukeboxes in Central America. And he makes gamification a strong part of the Triple C culture. Richard, it is such a pleasure to have you on the show to share your knowledge. You're doing so many amazing things. And as we were talking about in the pre-show, you've hit my heart because your building windows are green, which is my favorite color. So welcome to the show, Richard.
I checked so many boxes there. Glad I made the cut. Damon, I'm so happy to be here to share ideas with you and your audience and not only make money, save money, invest money, and enjoy your money. That's what I'm looking to do.
Oh, I love it. And I love those boxes that you just ticked there because I had that with one of my clients where they wanted to get to $1 billion in revenue, which they did, but then they lost money because they didn't focus on the profit component. So I love that you've touched that and we can get into that. But also, too, the key component that you talked about there is to have fun, to enjoy life. How much of that, when you look back at your history, if we're going to jump in the Wayback Machine, how much of that do you think that your success is attributed to you chasing money or you to chasing fulfillment and helping others?
Someone will always have more money than you, and golden goals lose their luster. So I think if you have a zest for life, if you have balance and center, if you don't need to pay to hang out with people, and you have real true friends, then you're
Yeah.
legit and everything's great. But for me, I mean, I like the adventure of it. I was a language major, so I
Mm.
really couldn't compare notes to people that studied economics or went to study law or medicine. I just wanted to open some doors and show good faith and
Mm.
just be flexible for the world, just so I could be more self-reliant and, you know, more self-confident. And really what it did was it opened my eyes on where I'd be most comfortable. I
Mm.
could earn a living doing 1,000 things, but those 999 other things would probably make me sad. And so you wouldn't see me on your podcast today pointing out my jukeboxes and pinball machines and my twists and turns that got me to Costa Rica. I would just be grinding it out and just being shoved into I guess, a subway car or walking down a very packed, you know, sidewalk to get to those large skyscrapers to just get into that cubicle. And all those images were things I just didn't want to be that brick in the wall. I had to go against that and just take a chance in life.
I love what you just mentioned there, in that you talked about show good faith. You wanted to show good faith. How much do you think your success hinges on your integrity to do the right thing?
No, they always say when the cameras are off, are you doing the right thing? Like, I base it on ethics. I
Yeah.
really go old school. I kind of go back to see what my grandmother and what my parents would do. And
Mm,
so if I can get a smile in return, if
mm,
somebody can give me a benefit of the doubt, if they're willing to give me the luxury of time to sleep on it, so we can write a draft and not send it, maybe ponder it, possibly overextended ourselves, Damien, and the
mm,
following day we can reset and get that
mm.
second chance. Those are the sort of positive reinforcements that I'm looking for along the way in order to make sure that I'm doing the right things.
Yeah, I love that, because I mean, when we're talking about sales, and this is what we're here for, is growing revenue and profit, they need to go in hand. But when you talk about sales itself, I mean, when you're out in there doing the sales component, for me, sales has always been about showing the other person that you can do what you say you can do. Because a lot of people go out there and say, oh, I've got the best gizmo, whiz bang, whatever it is, or I can do this better than everyone else. But the question is, if you're going to get the sale across the line, it's, does the other person believe that you can do that? Is that been, similar sort of thing from your perspective when you're talking about creating that show of good faith, about creating that integrity?
Well, we really focus on the pre-sale because
Oh.
you're talking about actually on the dance floor dancing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's Hollywood movie time. What about the 99 times you're getting hung up on or trying to get through gatekeep?
Mm.
Practicing your rhetoric because the script is a little too aggressive and people
Oh.
are not responding well. And so we always focus on vocabulary to see if it could be more diplomatic,
Mm.
potentially more strategic, because
Yeah.
English is the second language for the Costa Rican. And so it
Mm.
not only has to be something they understand, but something they're going to want to perform and feel
Mm.
very comfortable with so they can ethically go home and tell their parents what they do for a living. So we're very selective of the campaigns that come in. I
Mhm.
always believe that people give a bad rap to a gatekeeper. I,
Mm.
these individuals here are a plethora of information for companies. Plus, at the end of the day, maybe the owner of the company will ask their front line, how was their day? Did anybody make an impression on you? And so what I like to do is I like to jump clouds, or we call them romantic deaths, where in the
Okay.
first 30 seconds, at least I'm going to be able to do a company name spike. I'm going to say, growing revenue and profits. How you doing today? I'm going to say better than you do, Damien. So at least snap you out of that trance. Then you're going to
Mm.
ask what my name is. You had
Yeah.
mentioned that buffer boomerang technique before.
Yeah. Yep.
Really, it's adjustments of tones. People are black and blue from being
Mm.
hit on or trying to be bypassed and circumvented. So what I
Mm.
like to do is to capture that negative tone. I'm going to say, Damien, that's an excellent question. My name is Richard Blank. So I'm going to name drop you and buffer it. I'm going to let you know it's a great question. Glad you brought it
Mm.
up. I'm going to repeat your question to show active listening because these are
Mm.
little first down anchoring techniques, and then
Yeah.
send it back positive. And so let's just say hypothetically within that first 30 seconds, I'm going to be transferred to a decision maker. I'm going to let you know verbally it's a positive escalation. I'm going to
Mm.
let you know that you did a great job. And when you transfer me, I'm going to give the gift of that positive escalation because you gave me the pass to pitch to speak to
Yeah.
the business owner. So instead of starting at a 10, now they're starting at a 2 on defense. And that got adjusted into a forward motion. And so all you're really doing is learning about this company culture prior to any sort of contracts. And you're
Mm.
buying time, Damien, 30 seconds at a clip, and you are
Mm.
confirming things so
Yeah.
you can put it to bed and bridge. And so people are not in the now. I think they're losing their spontaneous
Mm,
gifts, such as Robin Williams made him a genius. And so there are things that pop up on these phone calls or in a LinkedIn profile or on a website that could
mm,
easily be used to show your due diligence. Like
mm.
you and I, prior to this podcast, we have so many things in common. Imagine if you had that preparation prior to launching that arrow.
Yeah.
Now you're fighting differently. These are long bows. Now you can take some really good shots. And I've seen distance.
Yeah.
I've seen momentum. I've seen at least a custom made voicemail or email will get me a larger percentages of a callback or a
Yeah.
response. Didn't say I'm closing the deal. Oh, my
Mm.
friend, at least we're dancing. And then, it's really yours to lose.
I love that what you're talking about there because a lot of people, from what I hear, well, yeah, from what I see a lot out there, there's a lot of rhetoric about getting that that one key line, and an example is in people going, oh, if I could just get that one ad on the Super Bowl, and that one ad on the Super Bowl is not really going to get you much of anything because it doesn't create that relationship. What you're talking about, I love that you said that before about, it's not about those lines, all the homework that you've done beforehand about creating that relationship, about creating that connection. And even you mentioned the gatekeeper. I mean, how often, the whole point of the gatekeeper is to keep the gate. And if you treat the gatekeeper with disrespect, it's going to be hard to get the key to open that gate. Whereas even if you can't get through, if the gatekeeper is really, really good, you're not going to get through. But if you create a relationship with a gatekeeper after several, as you said, don't give up on that first call. After a while, you might actually create that relationship where you connect with the person. Is that where, from your perspective, you had this study of language? Was it understanding that you're dealing with people? And I know for me, and this is terrible, but I learnt too late in life that people don't remember so much what you say, but how you make them feel. Is that understanding of language, helped you from that perspective of creating that connection with people?
Everyone's a riddle. I can't give you $1 million crack code, and I didn't write a book on it. This is what
Yeah,
I do know, that you like me enough to have me on your podcast. I
yeah.
found you interesting enough to binge listen and to write you and to let you know you're doing some great work.
Mm,
And also, not to tell all the information, but there was a hiccup on my end. We were
mm,
supposed to have a podcast recording prior to this, but
mm,
through our professionalism and communication and second chances and benefits of the doubt,
mm,
we're here today. And it makes it even that much sweeter. It shows I really wanted to be here today. And so people see things that are flawless, but behind the scenes, the grind, they don't see the setup
mm,
behind it. They just want the prize. They just don't want to train 6 months before going into the ring. And so to me, I enjoy the gym. I enjoy
mm.
Rocky 3. I enjoy training before fighting Mr. T. I like anticipation. I like the build up. I like the balance. I like the mindset. I like
Mm,
repeating in my mind the success and possibly even being a devil's advocate, not that I'm looking to lose, but I always believe that character is judged during chaos. And if I have
mm,
every solution for anything that could potentially go wrong and be at the ready, and then by all means, throw as many as you want at me. I'm going to catch each one. It's almost like a game at that point. You're almost too prepared for an exam. You finish
mm.
early and you tell the teacher that you'd like to write more. So for me, what I like to do, I like
Mm,
to educate. And so my clients like to bring things to me, and I will try to compare to other verticals or my experience, or I'm going to
mm,
let them know that I don't get the warm fuzzies from it. You're being too aggressive, or you're not calling the right area, or you're not training or giving us the right resources. And so
mm,
you want to reduce attrition. As much
mm,
as I can sell this thing and try to promote it, really the market speaks. And since
mm,
Amazon is here, Damien, we compete. Besides a base salary, benefits, location of my pinball machines, the agent would like to be happy if they're
Mm.
doing something 160 hours a month,
Yeah.
especially in a cubicle where it may seem monotonous.
Mm.
And you have to think about the reduced stimuli of the
Yeah.
taste, touch, and smell. These things are not being used over the phone, so they aren't being robots. They become plastic. I try to always emphasize the art of speech
Mm.
and the synergy of it, and not falling into the sort of people look down on telemarketers sometimes, or they see it
Mm.
as a transitional type of job. You and I
Mm.
both know someone is very talented on the phone. They can grow a business. They can
Yeah.
retain that client and get that upsell. You were talking about relationship building earlier. I guess my main man, you need to be sincere. It's like telling the
Mm.
truth. You try to put up a front, you're going to get caught. Sure, we're wearing suits tonight and we look very nice. It's
Mm.
because we respect what we're doing here. But
Mm.
all in all, it doesn't mean anything. Really, the most important thing is your essence and the
Mm.
fact that you can show interest in other people and work sometimes at their pace. If they have a protocol, if they have parameters, don't always try to cold call close them. It's not like Blake and Glengarry Glen Ross. It's not what we're trying to do here.
Yeah.
And so I really tried to keep that certain balance of people so they will still accept these phone calls and realize that telemarketing, appointment setting, and lead generation is still
Mm.
a means to an end.
Yeah. I love where you've gone there, and because we are talking about, again, growing revenue and profit, but the foundation of that, and you've really touched on so much of the foundation. Everyone looks at the glossy, oh, they got the sale, but not all the work that went behind that,
Mhm.
including, and the couple of key words that you talked about there is character and sincerity. From that perspective, and I know it's a rhetorical, probably an obvious question, but how important is that character and integrity from the perspective, and combine that with, you mentioned about listening. I made that note there about listening, having that empathy to actually, how much of the success in sales has been having that character to have the empathy to listen to what they really need.
You willing to put your phone down for an entire hour and sit and look at someone at lunch? No,
Mm,
seriously, I
yeah,
am.
yeah.
And so
I don't pull
it's
my
this.
phone out, and it lives on silent. My phone lives on silent.
It's just one of the examples, and we could use that to laugh, but for me,
Mm,
I try to listen twice as much as I
mm,
speak. I know I'm sharing a lot of secrets today, and I'm expected to,
yeah.
talk, but I find it very interesting
Mm,
because there could be some misconceptions.
mm.
Obviously, if I'm trying to push lobster and you want steak, we be wasting 20 minutes. And so there's
Yes.
very good ways to guide conversations.
Mm,
So I'm still participating, but you're leading. And
mm,
then there's certain ways I can do to add to it until it's exhausted. And then, it's really just about open-ended questions with people. But, as I'm going to say it before, it's really about buying time. People are usually thinking of something in the future or they're
mm,
dwelling on something in the past. We've heard about this before. It's very difficult for someone to be in the now. In the
mm.
now. So I got
Yeah.
to snap you out of it a couple times, as I mentioned earlier, saying the name of your company better than you do, or reminding you of actual people that work with you.
Mm,
Please, Damien, separate me from the 99 other people that have called you already, and I
yeah.
can show this to you. And so it's really about decompressing people
Mm,
because they've had so many people trying to push their way into a meeting or a phone call. But
yeah.
for me, I'll take a glamorous death. I'll say the name of your company. I'll name drop you 3 times, introduce myself, and thank you so much. Why you hang up on me? Because why? Why not? I do it so many times a day, I might as well master the first 30 because
Mm,
nothing else matters. You were talking earlier about relationship building on the dance floor. You got to have enough guts to walk across the dance floor and ask somebody to dance. Everyone always says, I'm the best wingman. Yeah, but you got to be the ace. You got to be the guy that's making the move. You got to make the cold call. But to me, it's a warm call, because if I had mentioned you earlier and I call your company back, it's a Richard Circle. You'll thank me for the compliment. You'll say, out of the 10 years I've been working at this company, you're the only one who said something to Damien. Or, hey, you didn't realize I'm his wife, or I'm his daughter, or I've been here for 20 years. These are the things that no one asks. Remember Patch Adams? The doctor said, does anybody have a question? Patch goes, yeah, what's the patient's name? And they said he was genius. No, he just has manners and he has common sense. And just by using somebody's name, and even if it's exotic, you're allowed to ask things with the military alphabet, because certain vowels in Latin America sound differently than they do in North America. And so why don't you talk about the white elephant in the room? You have an extremely exotic name. The greatest thing to do is to say it correctly in the beginning, because maybe you're the only one that does ask about it.
Exactly.
And it's almost like
usually you are the only one that does ask.
The models say that they're so good looking that men are intimidated to ask them to dance or even to introduce themselves. Same thing with someone from another culture. Instead of being insulted by it, you obviously are as exotic to them as they are to you. My friend, you're in Australia. I'm from Philadelphia. I live in Costa Rica. Throw 3 more things in there that are just way out. And so it's that you need to ask clarification questions. You need to separate piles for people. It's much easier to carry smaller bags. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's inquisitive. It's really being educated. You can't. Okay, fine. I understand where people go by saying, what's wrong with your accent? Or your accent sounds different. No. You can say, Damon, for my clarification, your accent is not from the United States. Is that correct? Then we can just play a guessing game that way. And so a lot of it is falling on swords. I can ask for clarification or an edification as not to insult you, but to show you, as you said earlier, good faith, to understand you. So that's what I'm always looking to do.
And exactly like you did just then, because you're the one who mentioned good faith, and then I repeated it, and you just put it back on me, making me feel good. I love that. Exactly. I now highlighted that for the audience just to see that component. But from that component, you mentioned before about walking across the dance floor.
Right.
Getting up there, and you've listened to a number of my podcasts, so apologies if you're getting the same story that you've heard before, but for the audience, the new audiences that haven't heard it, others have. But I had a friend in the army. Oh, it wasn't really a friend, but it was someone I was in the army with. He was a good-looking guy, but he was a bit dumb, in my opinion. But he was always dating these amazing women. They were beautiful. They were doctors and lawyers, and just really genuinely good people that would help out. And we're looking, myself and my friends are going, how? You're not that bright. And, you're good looking, but we were always thinking, he must be well hung or something like that. It was, I was 19-ish. That's the thoughts that go in your head.
Sure.
And one day I asked him, and I said, Shane, and I did say this, I said, Shane, you're not that bright. How is it that you're dating all these amazing women? And he turned into this wise, old soul, put his arm around my shoulder, and he said, Damien, what you don't see is I ask a lot. Most of them say no. You just see the ones that say yes. And when we come back to your comment about character, how much of that in that character is it going, okay, let's look at myself as being worthy of asking the question. Maybe we don't have an alignment. Maybe there's a reason why this person says no. But I'm worthy, so I'm going to ask again. I'm going to ask for that next sale because I believe in my product or service enough that I think it has value, and I just need to find the right person that it's going to add value to. How much of that character do we need to have to just keep asking?
Let me ask you a question. What happens when a boxer goes 15 rounds but loses on decision? You still respect the fighter?
Of course, yeah.
Did they do everything they could to win that fight?
Definitely. Well, I'd assume so,
intensive.
yeah. It's
Well,
15 rounds. It's a long time. It's pretty exhausting.
let's look at it like this, my main man. There are certain athletes, or there are certain people where at the end of a competition they go, I did what I could, but I ain't got no more. And
Yeah.
they respect an opponent, not that someone is superior, but they brought the best out of them. Let's
Mm,
say you keep me on the phone for 15 minutes.
yeah.
I literally answer every single question. But
Mm,
then you say, Richard, do you do graveyard shift? I go, Damon, unfortunately, I don't do 24/7. Boom, kill that deal. Hey, do you guys speak Chinese? I'm looking for some Chinese support. I go, we do Spanish and English here. So once again, I'd have to pass on that. And
mm,
then I match the rates that are offshore in India and the Philippines. I could offer it, doesn't mean they'll take it. So
mm,
doesn't mean that we do not want to work with one another. We're
mm,
begging to, but by default, sometimes it's just ships in the night. It just doesn't happen. And so
mm,
why don't we take it on a case by case, and we can't keep forcing fits.
mm,
My goodness, you go 15 rounds with someone, and from an educated point of view, they make a decision that
mm,
you just can't work together ethically. You just can't take the contract, or it's just not going to happen.
mm,
That's incredible. And so the main thing is going distance and getting that
mm,
time. And so I can live with myself if it's not a right fit. If someone goes, yeah, we're good, click. I didn't even say Damien growing revenue and profit yet. You just hung up on. You said we're good, thanks. I know you're good, thanks. But listen, the king that never listens to anybody, they don't last long. Some kings
mm,
listen to some people. Maybe they forget gas for their car. Still doesn't work. Listen to
mm,
everybody. And then through
yeah,
deductive reasoning or whatever it is, choose the best.
mm,
Because the people that work with me have given me some of the greatest ideas that, as you say, we might oversee because of distractions or just
mm,
routine, or in
mm,
our offices all day, we don't hear the chatter. And so keep that open mind, put your ego aside, and
mm,
mind you that there are people there that are looking for your best interest. It just doesn't always have to be financial or
mm,
something where it's office politics. As you
yeah.
say, there are people out there that open doors and that are very
Definitely.
are thoughtful of others.
Mm. That thoughtfulness component you're talking about there, because when we're talking about negotiation, I teach this other program called Negotiation Magic, which is a very high-end negotiation program. But one of the things we look at is what's called the zone of potential agreement. So if you're in sales and you're wanting to reach an agreement, first you've got to find out whether they have a need for what you've got. And part of this is coming back to listening. Is that from that component, from your perspective, how do you encourage people to want to listen? Is it people just have that character and some people don't want to listen? Or from your experience of working with the 10,000, over 10,000 people and training them, are people able to learn that? Or do most people genuinely have that inside them, you just need to bring it out?
You can set it up prior to saying something. I might, Damien, may I
Mm.
make a suggestion? And you
Mm.
say, sure, Richard. Yeah, your tie's crooked. So sometimes you can ask for the permission prior. You
Yeah.
can set the sort of reaction before it's done. You
Mm.
know, I don't like when people say, I want to tell you the truth, or usually, I usually do things like that. No, these are the sort of things where you have to be forthright with people,
Mm.
because the best relationships are built when, I guess, you get through something together. Band of
Yeah.
brothers, right? Because good times are good times, let them roll. But if you work through some sort of bumps with somebody and you get to see true character, I mean, that's amazing with people. But for me, the greatest comedians are
Mm.
the ones that can, I guess, make jokes about themselves. And I'm a firm
Mm.
believer that if you're vulnerable, it really makes you powerful. And
Mm.
so I'm allowed to share my own experiences of starting a company, sitting in a cubicle, making a phone call, getting a sale, getting rejected, working on scripts, QA. Okay, I can definitely relate to whatever this individual is bringing to the table on a personal note, and I like to do it where they get to see me prior to the suit and the CEO. I want them to see me during the grinding years when I had the grit, because here it is today. I can tell you the final chapter of the story and the happy ending, but why don't we talk about 30-year-old Richard that were making phone calls prior to a predictive dialer, working off of a Cisco phone and using highlighter pens with printed Excel. Fun days. And so these are the sort of coming of age moments you need to talk to people, because you can't really expect people just to plug and play. It has to be, as music or art, a balance, because a Manhattan boiler room sort of feel might not work well here in Costa Rica, and something that might be too laid back might stall the car. So it's really about what is a right bus, right seat. What's the right project, the right list, the right script, the right agent. And if you can combine something like that, by all means, you have a very nice machine that grows. But, getting back to your stuff, it's people put up fronts, or maybe they are limited for time, or they're comparing you to what's happened before. And I'm okay with all of that. I click my heels. I smile at life. This should have never happened to me. So the calls that I make, I still have a spring in my step. They're asking, what's going on here? Costa Rica, Richard Blank. I can remember that last name. And you said something about pinball machines? Okay. Listen, like a rock climber, Damien, I'll always get a grip. On every phone call I make, I'll always get a grip. I'll do a couple good name drops. I'll do positive escalation. I make camp and make nice. So at least I'm there. And it's fun for me. So your buddy doesn't make 100 calls a day. I'm usually making like 84, or at least I used to. Why? Because my talk time, I'm usually on the phone for a little longer. But what about his numbers in the back? They're the best. Why? Because I'm enjoying what I'm doing. And that was the difference between people that are just grinding it out and trying to read books and listening to seminars to figure out who they should be. Really, what they need to do is look in the mirror and be happy with themselves. So they can make their bed in the morning, they can hit the gym, they can eat well, so physiologically they feel well. So they can be the trunk of their own tree. And then you can worry about your branches and roots and other people. But you gotta find your balance first before you concentrate on other people. And that's even prospecting on the phone or even doing business. People can sense those things. They know if you're shining or not. People can tell if you're having a good day. Can't you tell? I mean, the day after the prom, everyone's smiling, right? We had a great time.
Exactly. I love what you've just said there about, looking in the mirror and liking what you've got. It's too often I find, for me, and I've written a number of articles on this, and I'm working on a book, is we spend a lot of time trying to work out why. Why do we need to do this? But if we just got up and did something, anything, do we need to understand? I don't understand. I mean, I roughly understand how an internal combustion engine works, roughly. But if I was to tell you how my, Land Rover works, I couldn't tell you all the details. But I don't need to get in there and drive the thing. I don't even need to understand how the internal combustion component works. I need to know how to push the button, or need to know how to have the key with me, push the button and put it in gear and turn the steering wheel and press the accelerator. Outside of that, the rest of it I don't need to know. So how much do you think from this perspective, do we spend too much time worrying about people spend too much time, when they're trying to succeed, going, trying to understand their purpose or whatever, or just do something? Because you're from your history, and I'm going to go back to the first animated feature film, which was Snow White. And when they were cleaning the house, Snow White and the animals cleaning the house, they were singing Whistle While You Work. And we know today, as soon as you think a happy thought, you produce dopamine. So why not just pick something, do it, and enjoy what you're doing? Is that an approach that you think could work, or do we need to go through this journey of discovering who we are?
No one should ever be on a long forced march.
Of that analogy.
I think the smartest people can think like a 12-year-old. So let me follow up on your example of you called it was a Range Rover, right? Is that what it was?
Yeah.
Range
Land Rover. Yeah, Range Rover. Yeah.
Land Rover.
And
Okay,
Land
Land
Rover
Rover.
brand.
You don't know you don't know the engine. You know how to turn it on, you know how to drive it. That's fine.
Mm.
But you have the medium. I don't know how to do my server room, but I have a CTO. I didn't
Yeah.
make those Dell computers. Somebody
Yeah.
did. What about those Plantronic headsets, or even the people that built my building? But Damien, listen, my friend, I have a medium. Your Land Rover could drive people to a hospital, to a baseball game, to an INXS concert, you name it. It's a medium that can help make money, can bring food to churches, can get you out of danger. If you're in the outback, you tell me. It's a medium. I didn't expect you to make it or master it, but since it was given to you, you're using it for good. And so my mediums that I walk into, like this technology we have, I didn't create Zoom, but you and I are using this medium for happy and to share and to have this sort of engagement. And so I don't carry that sort of guilt. I try to add on to, contribute to. I'll take your paint, but allow me to make the painting.
Yeah.
That's what I see life as. I've been given these gifts to do things with. And if I can look to see different ways to use it to inspire, to have people ponder or even gravitate towards me, then by all means, I will use any sort of stimuli to get people to at least live a little more. And so you have to decide to live your own life or live someone else's life. And there are people that are naysayers and great believers. It's their N-O, Damien, means they don't K-N-O-W what you're doing. It's impossible for me to share notes with my parents that went to Columbia Business School and did all this finance when I was a Spanish major at Arizona. My great-grandparents came from Europe. Okay, great. So I can compare myself to a couple generations back that were nomads. That was my argument to my parents at 18 years old on why I wanted to study languages compared to going to Ivy League. Because look what our great-grandparents did. They were entrepreneurs. They left Eastern Europe, came to New York, were in the fashion industry, made their money. Look at the lives they provided for us. So I'm taking that momentum in blood and I'm going south. Why? Because I want to leave a castle, Damien. I want to slay a dragon, maybe save a princess and become a prince. Because if not, then I'm living in a box without walls, and no money can pay for that. There's no satisfaction.
Where do you think that
That's
drive comes from? Because I've talked to and I've worked with a couple of organizations, in particular with some countries that are where the people are repressed, and it was okay, I want to help them, give them some sort of education. We had the capacity to do that, and I was going through that, but people that weren't even in the country from that origin wouldn't even step up to do an interview. And I was like, I don't understand that. I mean, I look at, and I use this analogy a lot in respect of, because most people know of America and most people know that how it was founded. And there was an uprising where people said, no, we're not going to be under this. We want to create our own destiny. And they had a very, very bloody war to actually get to that point. But they stood up and they said, no, we're not going to be oppressed. That's how they saw it, and we're going to create the culture that we want to create. But they stood up for that. They were willing to give up. Is that a character trait, or can people learn to have that?
You should be very selective of what you're fighting for.
Yeah.
A lot of people can be reckless with their decisions, manic at the moment, maybe under some sort of duress. Who knows?
Yeah.
So I mentioned earlier, if someone can sleep on it, take a walk, speak to your best friend without repercussion, then by all means get a second or a third opinion. But then there's also that thing that's inside of each one of us, that spark or that flame that drives you somewhere. In your culture, you have your walkabout, and I like to consider it a vision quest, your spiritual life journey, your shedding of skin, and becoming something that you were always meant to be.
Yeah.
So, as I mentioned earlier, the worst thing to do is to sell yourself short, to settle, to live a sort of existence that was expected of you that you feel is just not satisfying. And that's why, unfortunately, people get divorced, or they're not close with friends or their family, or they're just sad. And you might need to be selfish from time to time and make certain decisions. Fortunately for me, by learning that second language, I was getting such reinforcement in and outside the classroom. All the world was a stage. I could really fall anywhere and be happy doing this. And it just so happens at 27, I was given a 1 in a million opportunity to leave the United States and move to Costa Rica and work at my friend's call center for just a couple months. And I decided to stay and get past my parents' guilt. And 2 months, Damien, turned into 4 years. And so how I built my business was I learned this business from the inside out, but not at sea level. And one of the greatest gifts that I got, yes, $1 million bit of advice, was that I heard people griping about the good and the bad and the happy and the sad. And I realized that really all people want is just their dignity, and for bosses to extend any sort of empathy towards them. And by just knowing somebody's name and playing games with them and breaking bread and showing active interest in their careers and their developments, I've been able to build a foundation of people that have been with me over a decade. And so it's very humbling. I mean, without wind in your sails, you're not moving. And so having this sort of collective physics is incredible, because it's, you might think you have friends, but if no one shows up at your Chuck E. Cheese party, you don't have it. And as much as you have drive and intelligence in business, the market speaks. In order to grow, you need to delegate. People need to believe in you. And so don't overextend, don't oversell it, because eventually the people will see what's behind the curtain. And if you disappoint them, then you can never really get that back. So it's better off to have that open air kitchen where people can really see what you get, and hopefully they love it. And if they do, then you're going to do great.
There's 2 points I want to address. There's one, and you talked about overcoming your parents' guilt. And I relate to that from the perspective, I've heard it mentioned before in respect of males, that the boy doesn't really become a man until his father died, because then he starts making his own decisions. And from my perspective, my dad died a long time ago. He's still alive today, but metaphorically. It was over a packet of chips. I was staying at my dad's house. I was in between houses and I was living with him, and I bought some Pringles chips. That's not a product placement, but that's just to highlight the story. My dad's quite frugal and buys no name brands. He walks into the kitchen and looks at me and he goes, What are you eating them for? They're expensive. And I didn't justify, didn't get defensive. It was completely different. I'm not sure what it was. Something in me was different. And I just said, I like them. Just stating what's right for me. And he goes, yeah, but they're expensive. And I just said, yeah, but I like them. And he went, huh. And he walks away. And from that moment, we had a very, very different relationship. It was almost as though he goes, okay, you're an adult, you can make a decision. But for me, I didn't need to justify myself anymore. So from that perspective, how does that relate from when you look at your journey and creating a business and sales, which is a critical part of business? How much do you think that was contingent on your ability to say, hey, I don't feel guilt about, I'm creating my own path now. I don't feel good about what my parents expect of me or what anyone else expects of me. I'm clear about who I am and I'm moving forward. How much do you think that congruency was important to your success?
Well, it happened when I was 13 years old.
Mm.
I guess my last year at a private school was seventh grade, school that my father and brother graduated from. It was a elite private school called Germantown Academy.
Mm.
And so really from going from private school to public school, 60 kids to 500 kids in your class,
Yeah.
that was a big change. And so by not following in certain footsteps at an early age, and it was almost by force. So I was not happy there. I was having a tough year. Teachers kind of gave up on me. It was just one of those things that happened.
Mm.
And so instead of doing the easy way and getting in more trouble,
Mm-hmm.
really maybe getting arrested, kicked out of school, getting in fights, I went the hard way. I worked hard in athletics, student government, really got involved in things. And even today, I have a second language scholarship in my old high school alma mater and was just inducted into a Hall of Fame. And so I have fidelity when people believed in me.
Yeah.
And I was given college recommendation letters by a principal and a Spanish teacher, different from what the advice my parents could give or what they even knew. And so not just in my own circle and my family, which loved me and supported me, I was getting good feedback from community, learned individuals, respected individuals. So any sort of influence of saying you're doing the right thing or the wrong thing, I was getting second and third opinions. And so sometimes families that can put a lot of pressure on you or supply opinions for you, I was listening to second and third opinions as well, because these individuals were guiding me towards a language career, not what my family was used to. And so was I the black sheep? I guess. A rebel? Rebel what? All I was doing was just drinking life and realizing that languages was great and it was fun and it came easy to me, and I was doing more dedicated practice besides the required hours in school and the homework. I was watching movies, listening to songs, finding people to hang out with, read it.
Yeah.
And when you have that sort of passion towards anything, you have to hold on tight and see where that goes. And for me, this second language got me literally to where I am today.
Yeah.
And I couldn't thank it enough. And my 18-year-old self for following through on that long journey that we started.
Yeah. How much of that do you think, and I'm going to deal with hard and easy now, is I was having a discussion with my son's karate sensei, and we're talking about hard and easy. And I said hard and easy is relative. It's relative to your experience. Things aren't hard, things are. Shakespeare wrote in Hamlet, Scene 2, Act 2, nothing is good or bad, thinking makes it so. And I've translated that to, things are just are. It's relative to where you're at. And I said to my son's karate sensei, I said, you're a 7th Dan black belt. If I asked you to do a grading at a yellow belt level, how difficult is that for you? And he goes, it'd be really easy. I said, well, it's not that the task is hard or easy. The task is the task. It's relative to your experience and ability to do that task as to whether it's hard or easy. Because if you look at yourself now, if you take all your experience that you have now and you went back to your 18-year-old self, how hard would it be to create compared to what you did then to what you have now? And is it one of those things where we need to have that focus and go, okay, self-responsibility? Where I'm at now, if I'm having difficulties now, it's not necessarily the task that's difficult. It might be more my mindset, my attitude, my skill set. Is that fair to say from your experience?
I didn't start my business till my mid-30s. I
Mm.
needed impulse control, of course, capital. But
Yeah.
here's the big thing that I needed: maturity. That's it. Maturity.
Mm.
So if I can go back to my 18-year-old self, I was as immature as the day is long.
Mm.
So how could you explain somebody picking up a phone call and telling a client a situation,
Yeah.
handling large payrolls, and amassing certain sort of capital? It just
Mm.
seemed something that I can't say was out of reach. It was just something inconceivable, because
Yeah.
$5 for me would last a whole Saturday at an arcade. I couldn't be thinking about seven figures.
Mm.
Seemed out of reach. And so things need to be in our American football, we have first downs before
Mm.
touchdowns.
Yeah.
I believe in checkpoints.
Mm.
People really need to see the mountain in the distance,
Mm-hmm.
but there's a lot in between that.
Mm.
It's target paralysis. I mean, people really need to focus on their steps, and a
Mm.
little at a time does equal a lot in the end. You just have to be patient and hang in there. You're looking at a man that's been in this industry 23 years, but have owned my own business 15 years.
Mm.
I can't believe we've gotten this far, but I also can,
Mm.
because as a boxer, if I'm focusing on not just the rounds or the minutes, but the actual seconds by seconds,
Yeah.
I will last. I can
Mm.
make it through deserts. It's just
Yeah.
really that focused concentration over and over again, and also muscle memory and
Mm.
things where if you're practicing diplomacy, if you're practicing being humble with people, speaking second so you're not misunderstood,
Mm-hmm.
maybe clarifying things and doing meeting minutes so you can have checkpoints. These are just soft skills that people could just continue to practice, and not to be so hard on oneself.
Yeah.
You could be catching somebody, as you say, on a very, very bad day.
Mm.
But on another day, they could embrace it. But
Mm.
today, that was the straw that really broke that camel's back, and someone could curse at you. I've seen people quit because of things that were affecting them outside the office that affected their day on the
Mm.
phone. It's like a spider's web. You just
Mm.
keep tangling yourself. And so when I see things like that, it's like the old adage with fire: you're supposed to stop, drop, and roll.
Yeah.
Stop what you're doing right now.
Mm.
Drop this topic and let's roll out of here for a minute. Damien, put some water on your face. Let's go get
Mm.
some coffee. Why don't
Yeah.
we go play some pinball in the game room? I
Mm.
just, yeah, but I need to get back on the phone. You're not getting anywhere. We need to reset you.
Mm.
And then I throw a little Philly guilt in there. I say, yo, Damon, you're out of character today, right? You're like, of course I am. I know you are. And so you sometimes have to call the balls and the strikes.
Yeah.
And sometimes you got to do what has to be done in order for someone to go the distance. And they'll
Mm.
respect you more with not getting a second chance, but not giving up on them, because
Yeah.
maybe they not violated the labor laws, but someone loses their head for a second, and if it's nothing that's a deal breaker,
Well,
give
there's
someone a benefit of the doubt. You know what I
yeah.
mean? Allow them to calm down, knock on your door, and say, Damon, I'm so sorry. I really messed up earlier. Thank you so much for pulling me out. And that's how you connect.
I love that.
That's
I
how
mean,
you
I love that you're talking about games as well, and using that the the games, because I had an experience with my son. We were playing a racing game, and we've got a racing simulator. So he was sitting in the driver's seat, and he's driving, and he was having a shocking, because we were going one race, and then we'd swap, and I'd race, and he'd race, and I'd race, and we'd go back to sports. And then he's having this shocking race, and I could see, and he's probably getting a bit tired too. This was a few years ago, and he was just getting worse and worse, and I could see his attitude was wrong. That was what was causing it. It was his attitude. And so he finished this race. It was terrible. He was ropeable. He wanted to get up and walk away. It was my go next, and he just wanted to leave. And I'd said, no, you get back on there. You will do this again. You will focus. And I said, this is what you're going to do. And I set his mindset. You will focus on this. Focus on, here's your apex on the corner. Do this. He went and did it. And he had the best race that he'd ever had. And it was purely because that focus and that reset, which is where I want to, and you mentioned before about, playing, video or pinball games when you were younger and spending the afternoon, which, I can relate to. And is that, when we look at you tell us a bit about this love of pinball machines, love of jukeboxes, and what's the favorite music that you play on your jukebox?
That's very easy to answer that question. Man, you set
For the
that one
audience,
up.
I said, look at that, In Excess. For the audience,
My
Richard
favorite
showed me
band of
this.
all time.
He showed me this beforehand, and this is, I guess, we're both highlighting for each other, and for the audience, I think we're highlighting this part of listening to what the other person says. So I'm guessing In Excess is a key
They're
band.
probably saying he's just mentioning this because he's on this show. You have absolutely no clue. I saw them in Philadelphia at the Spectrum in '88, but here's the show. I paid $100 for a $20 seat to see them at Union Hall, July 15th of '97. It was an NXS show, so there was no security. About 2,000 people in a small place, but I was front row center, and I was able to shake Michael Hutchinson's hand. Same thing with John Barris when he finished the show. But it was cool, man. It was a connection with NXS. And so you guys created some of the best rock and roll ever. And their story is great, too. It's a perseverance of band of brothers and best friends that not only toured the world, but grinded it out in all those old mining towns and hit the road. And they're doing albums and tours every year. And Chris Murphy, I mean, you guys, if you think about your culture and what you've contributed to the world of music, even with AC/DC. I mean, come on, this is some fun stuff. The vinyls and Crowded House, good stuff. But anyway, let's get back to
well, from that perspective, though, we've got to add that in, because I have a similar experience to what you had with In Excess. Whereas I was up front, exclusive. I paid a lot of money for that. I think I paid $2,500 for the table at the front of the concert. And for a singer who's well renowned, who overcome tremendous adversity to be able to sing, and I got to shake Stevie Wonder's hand, as an inspiration. Stevie Wonder's cool. It's just like, someone that overcomes adversity. So we have a lot in common there, where we, sharing a love of music and connection with people and wanting to relate to that experience. It was wonderful.
One of my mentors, and I considered a master, was the late Helen Keller. Because the scientists, they know that when you lose one or more of your senses, the other ones get expanded. Now, Stevie Wonder, I mean, we're talking about a musical genius and the coolest cat in town. Huge fan of the work. Helen Keller as well, once again, created language, bridged from silence and darkness to the world, inspired. And so for us here, I believe that we've cracked some codes. Naturally, on the phone, you're losing your taste, touch, and smell. Hearing should be expanded. But I believe in image streaming. There is description, imagination. Books are better than the movie. And so as long as you continue to use colorful speech and adjectives, there's no reason why you can't keep gaining people's attention and making these conversations incredible. But So this passion that I have, well, one man's trash is another man's treasure. And I grew up in the 70s and 80s, and pinball was exceptionally expensive.
Was.
So for me,
It is now too. To
as
try
a
and find some
running,
good machines, it's very expensive.
people expect now that you're an owner of a company, you should have a Rolex and you should be driving some like Rolls Royce or something. I feel like Tom Hanks in the movie Big. You give me a wad of cash, I'm looking for video games. Just like a kid. Maybe some cotton candy machine. That would be next. But the
Oh,
main thing
yeah.
is the craftsmanship. This is gorgeous one behind
Mm,
me. She's a 1961 Coca-Cola
mm.
Regis. I got 6 jukeboxes and I got 13 pinball machines. The oldest one is a 1976 Bally's Freedom. And then you're
Wow.
looking at the one in the mid 90s is an Arnold Schwarzenegger Last Action Hero.
Oh,
And you'll find them here. And they're in
mm,
bodegas or sitting somewhere, and you'll pick them up for a couple $100.
yeah.
And then in the United States, there's some places you can order some equipment. I got the electricians here,
Mm,
move them here, fix them there. Not mint condition, but you're still looking at a machine that has a nice value to it. But
mm.
I'm not looking to sell them. That's the one. That's the one hill I'm willing to die on. My wife says, as long as we have the space, you can have them. So as long as I have this call center and a game room at home, I'm good. But I love the marquees and the play fields are incredible, especially some of the older pinball machines before they started having the laminate and like this
Oh,
really high end stickers that they would do for their play fields. It used to be painted wood. And so
yeah.
the cracks in the wood. They have their originals and they're gorgeous. And so people that maintain these older machines from the
Mm.
outside artwork, right?
Oh,
And the play
yeah.
field and the marquees for the old wheels that they may have. I love them. And so when they're here, I try to hold my excitement, but I
Mm.
can't help it. It's like Bo Derek and Dudley Moore in the movie 10, they're running towards each other on the beach. And then I start getting angry because they're putting things on it, like a bird crapped on it. It's in a corner. You don't put baby in the corner. So I scold them a little bit. And they're even, it's like they feel guilty and then they lower the price. Don't ask. These things are crazy when I go meet these
Mm,
people. But here's the skinny. And this is where I get these sales because they get phone calls and people compete.
mm.
But I love these machines so much.
Yeah.
And they know that they're going to a wonderful home. I'll
Mm.
bring stuff to, it's Wildcat 125. I have this liquid.
Mm.
I can shine them down. So I'm looking at him and go, listen, Billy, come here, buddy. Come over here. And I'll show him exactly what I'm going to do. I go, you can't sell this to anybody else. You know
Yeah.
I know what I'm doing. And so um, that's how I've accumulated so many. And these games are older than the agents. And they tell me they play virtual pinball. Listen, there's a lot of things virtually that's not as good as real life.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
pinball is one of them. And so I get them to feel the machine and they can appreciate the Who and Elton John's pinball
Mm.
wizard. And it gives
Mm.
them a chance to decompress, let off steam, recharge batteries, meet people from other departments, Damon, and even especially hang out with me.
Mm.
And check it out. Prior to large training classes, we
Mm.
put the 20 agents in the game room first.
Yeah.
Start with dessert first. So everyone's best friends. So when they
Mm.
come into the training room, instead of absorbing, now
Mm.
they're contributing because they're chilling. I mean, do
Yeah.
you understand? And so I've gotten such mileage out of these machines. People compare it to almost Willy Wonka's place when you walk into the factory. It's just, it's fun time. You got to definitely enjoy yourself.
I'm definitely coming to Costa Rica to get a ride in that limousine that you talk about to your office. But what I really want to highlight here for the audience, because and I mentioned it at the start, people are in this area when you're talking about growing revenue and profit. They're looking for the Super Bowl ad. They're going, if I just had that one Super Bowl ad. What you need, if you really want to grow the revenue and profit of your business, just rewind the tape a bit and listen to Richard's enthusiasm, to his passion for what he does. He's focused. He knows what he's after. He knows what he loves. And that focus transmits across to everything that he does because he's connected to it. And that's your Super Bowl ad. In my mind, correct me if I'm wrong, Richard, but your passion, your desire to help people, to contribute, to make other people's lives greater is the one of the, if not the key factor to your success.
Well, it gets their attention, but also given the opportunity, I built an Art Deco building with big bay windows with your favorite color green. We call them the jade color, right?
I love jade.
And,
I was going to call my daughter Jade if I had one.
of course. Neon marquees, just like the old theaters from the 20s. So if you ever get a chance, then you do it. You were mentioning the limo. Not the kind of limo that your audience is thinking. It's a restored 1984 300D Lang.
That's why I want to be in it. It's like awesome.
Yeah, we took out the seats in the middle, ripped them out.
Yeah.
Put in a bar. I painted it black. I got the white walls, and I found old school like hubcaps on it. So it's cool. It's real cool. My influence from that was Remington Steel. Pierce Brosnan show back in the 1980s. And so you always had to pick your clients up in a limo. That's what I always had to do here. So I found a really nice one and restored her. Her name was Daisy. She was actually in the 2018 Carnival here in Costa Rica. She was driving down Main Street with all the other classic cars. That was a lot of fun.
I love it. We've got to wind up. Richard, before we go though, can you, if you were to sum up or give a nugget, key wisdoms, if you want, more than one, what would be the key thing that you would want the audience to take away from this discussion?
Fortune favors the brave. Oh, my goodness gracious. You stay home, you're not going to meet anybody. You got to go out and you got to live your life. And if anything of nothing, start small. I mean, the best thing to do is to maybe just compliment people, the people that you see every day, the people that might be working at stores or restaurants, or people that the neighbors that you see. Remember, you are the medium. You're the ones that can bring people together. And once you can start doing things like that don't involve money or any sort of pressure, and things are done in a woo way where it's just a natural, there's no, like I was mentioning, wind and currents and water. That's why we have sails. That's why you don't need to row. And so I think if you can find ways to allow physics and gravity to work to your advantage, then you're not going to tire out. You're not going to pucker out. You might be able to go the distance. Your body and mind can only take so much. So as I mentioned, do not be hard on yourself. Learn to love oneself. Take care of yourself. Be able to look at yourself in the mirror. That's the most important thing. You know, shoulders back, chest out, chin up attitude. Because I'm 50 years old. I got another 50 years, and then that's it. We're done. And so I'm just going to be pretty much enjoying the rest of my life. And I can't thank you enough, Damon. I really enjoyed this time today. Your audience is great, and you bring the best out of us.
Richard, I'm blown away. That's sage advice. It's just amazing advice. And that's where I really encourage the listeners, focus on that advice. Don't focus on all the trends or whatever. Focus on what Richard has said in here, the fundamentals of being kind to people, having a purpose. Richard, thank you very much for being on the show. I'm not going to try and repeat everything that you've said because it's just so much wonderful information. Thank you for taking the time. It's been such an honor to chat with you, and hopefully we can have another chat in the future because I'd love to do that.
Definitely. I'll be flying out to Australia for the second podcast.
Awesome.